Now, just to go back, a blast from the past, that is Welcome Station in 1949, and it's Sir Ernest Oppenheimer with some of his associates at what would become Welcome Station before they started with the major development. And this is a photo from the Sharpeville massacre on 21 March 1961. And there was a poster of the 1958-1966 drought that we had. And this is the cornerstone of the Orange River scheme. It's today the Harib Dam, where they had one of the first major hydropower plants, and the other one was at the Van der Kloof Dam, which formerly was the P.K. Leroux Dam. Now, the peak of the industrial energy hydraulic mission was essentially notable for this thing that we as humans have, is once we think we are in control, we become authoritarian, and we start thinking deterministically, and we think we can do some fortune telling. And our science, our water science and technology became much more deterministic. We didn't worry about uncertainty. We could manage everything around that. When we look at the schemes that realized at the time, a number of very impressive water transfer systems, we still state of the art in that today. That was done primarily between 1970 and the 1980s. The Drakensberg hydropower scheme, which was well in advance of what had happened earlier at the Orange. We had the Sterkfontein Dam being constructed thanks to adding and effectively using hydropower, and that's a major storage site for more water for the Witwatersrand. And also then a very interesting game changer that actually worked in a very positive way of creating a memory was the energy crisis of 1973. And it also coincided with South Africa's peak gold production. So after 1973, we started teetering on this side, but energy played a key role in that process. At the time, we introduced strategies. We introduced Sasol 2 and Sasol 3 at Secunda, and then we used more coal, fossil fuel, for creating a fuel. And then we had another, and some people say it was the most important drought. That was the drought of 1978 to 1987. Now, just to give you an idea, this is the Sterkfontein Dam. It's our emergency supply. And it was here that we got a lot of rain in 2017 that helped us avert the major drought. This is the hydropower scheme in the Drakensberg. It's the 2008 upgrade. And there you have technology, what they had learned in the Drakensberg, they transferred to the Hottentots Holland, where they introduced the Palmit hydropower scheme. So you see panarchy, resilience, and the WEF nexus has this ability. You learn from the past and you try to improve on it in the present. This is the Groot Dry Dam, a dam that never existed before, or a storage facility, just a small river, but they measured its run over a long term, and they said, but this is where we need to build a dam for supplying water to Sasol. Just to show you how deterministic they were, was at the peak of the drought, they started with the construction of the Groot Dry emergency scheme. Now down here, I hope you can see it, that is the Vaal Dam, sorry, just take it back. That's the Vaal Dam. maybe I should use this. That's the Waal Dam. This is the Dry Dam, and this is more or less the Sasol works. So what they did was they built 7 weirs in this river. This is the Vaal River coming into the Vaal Dam with the intention of pumping the water upstream so that if the drought had to continue, it would be possible to keep Sasol running. So see how the water energy nexus came into effect. Unfortunately, they never needed to use that. And I have a student, Martin Genster, who discovered another SCADI scheme further downstream in the Vaal. Thank heavens they also didn't introduce that. But the reason why it wasn't implemented was probably as a result of very good planning. They worked with braces and belts. They were very sure about how they were going to deal with future water crises. There is Sasol 2 and Sasol 3 in 1982. Then, where does the social, ecological, hydrological mission jump in? I have to jump some time. I say more or less it started in 1994. We find that with the new constitution that was introduced in 1996, the principle was that the country's water resources belong to all the people. And South Africa, since the 1980s, as a result of political isolation, were not quite up to scratch in terms of our environmental consciousness. Only in the 1990s, when we were exposed to the first Earth Summit in 1992, did we really get the drift of things. And then we started excelling to the extent that at the time of the end of the Cold War, we started thinking more about the environment. We also started thinking more about a more humanitarian system of governance, and we had the CODESA talks taking place, but behind the scene, the political scene, there was a very interesting standing committee planning South Africa's future water. They operated between 1991 and 1995, and it's very interesting reading from their archive how they saw the future water of South Africa. Eventually, we sat with a situation in 1994 where about 6 million whites had access to water, and about 39 million South Africans as a whole. Only 12 million had no water, and 21 million did not have any sanitation. And that was the background that the new government set itself to eradicate. So that is where I say we have the emergence of the social ecological turnaround in South Africa's water governance development, where water per se was foregrounded. And we find that the RDP, between 1994, you had a number of presidential lead projects, and then in 1999 came Thabo Mbeki. He was a free market manager, and his policies were not always acceptable to some of the social democratic members of the ANC, and unfortunately it did not realize as he planned it. But it was in this period that you have your major pieces of legislation, the Water Services Act and the National Water Act. You and I are the owners of the water, the state is the custodian, and we have the right to clean drinking water. That is our human right, and an environment that is conducive to our health. So free basic water was introduced in 2000 and 2001, and here you find one of the first manifestations during the drought of 1989 to 1993, especially in the Eastern Cape and in KwaZulu-Natal, where the people were consulted. They were told, we will provide you with some groundwater. We will help you develop your community's water resources. And this was really one of the breakthroughs that we had in South African society. This was Kader Asma unveiling the presidential lead water project, the first one, and then the department. The whole governance system started changing. There were a number of road shows promising a transition, a rationalization, and also, of course, democratization. And the outcome is that in the 21st century, we are sitting with where are we now in terms of the WEF nexus. When we look at security and resilience, I would like to ask a question. We started with the Lesotho Highlands Water Scheme. The project actually, the contract was signed in 1986. It was completed in 2004. Phase 2 was resumed or started in 2014, and we have not yet moved properly beyond the planning phase into the implementation phase. We have a legacy also of the recent drought in the Western Cape, where we were water strapped, and it suggests to me we haven't made sufficient provision for this. Now, how resilient is our current social, ecologic, hydraulic mission? That is my question. And I was asked to give some summative observations. I thought, right, I'm not going to go into that end of the debate. Let's talk about the food. It started with irrigation between 1912 and 1942. The industry started about 1956 to 1990 in line with the general legislation, and then the water focus came in 1994 until 2008. Now, what is important is the 1950s marked the start of South Africa's rapid industrial growth, and it was unfortunately unsustainable development. The way in which we were mining, the way in which we were managing, made the panarchy cycles frequently finish up in phases of revolt. In 1955, 1956, the whole issue of environmental affordances, we started looking less at what the environment had to offer, and we started in a deterministically manner to take control of nature. We thought we took control of nature. And we have numerous examples of collapse. Now, there are three things that stand out to me that I thought that I would like to leave in your midst. The first is, where are the indications of serious collapse in our WEF nexus? And I look at the load shedding event that we had in 2008. We haven't quite recovered from it. And then in 2017, the Western Cape, right up to the present, I think they're still in a bit of a tight corner. So the water has collapsed. Now, when we talk about the food, and I'm not a supporter of any political party, I belong to my own party, but I think when we talk about food shortages, and that issue has to take the back seat to land expropriation, we may be in for our third collapse. Thank you.